Okay, so the paper we're diving into today is called The Adoption and Usage of AI Agents, Early Evidence from Perplexity.
And this is a big one. It's really the first massive field study of its kind.
Right, we're talking about hundreds of millions of anonymized interactions with Perplexity's AI browser, which is called Comet, and its agent, Comet Assistant.
So the vision here is to figure out who is using these things, how they're using them, and what happens when AI can finally, act on the open web.
Okay, so for anyone who just needs the quick takeaway, here's the 1-minute summary.
First thing you need to know, AI agent adoption is, for now, an elite phenomenon. It's heavily concentrated in high GDP countries among highly educated users.
And in very specific jobs, right, like knowledge-intensive sectors, digital tech, finance, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Second point, this isn't just people playing around. 57% of all queries are for high-value tasks.
We're talking productivity and workflow, learning and research.
Yeah, users are automating really complex goals. Summarizing things, analyzing data, managing documents, not just chatting.
And the third big insight.
The usage gets serious, fast. People might start with casual stuff like travel or entertainment, but they quickly shift toward more cognitively demanding things.
Career, learning, professional productivity. It seems like the novelty wears off and the real work begins.
That's the story.
Okay, let's unpack that. The first thing we need to clarify is this core concept. We hear LLM all the time, but what makes Comet Assistant an agent? How is that different from, say, a standard chatbot?
Right, it's a critical distinction. It really comes down to autonomy and action. So this paper defines an agent as an AI assistant that can autonomously pursue goals.
By planning things out first.
By planning and then taking multi-step actions to actually interact with and, change things in the real world. The LLM is the brain, the reasoning part.
And the tools are the hands.
The tools are the hands, exactly. They're manipulating calendars or spreadsheets, not just spitting out text.
So if a chatbot tells me how to book a flight, an agent actually goes to the airline's website, clicks the filter for a nonstop flight, and maybe even modifies my Google Doc with the itinerary.
You've got it. It operates in this framework they call React, which is basically a loop. It thinks, it acts, and then it observes.
Okay, so it makes a plan, tries something with an API or browser control.
Right, that's the acting part. And then it observes the result. It sees what happened and adjusts the plan if the first attempt didn't quite work. Without that loop, it's just a very smart search engine.
That shift from conversation to action that's why the study is so important. So looking at who adopted it first, the rollout was phased. Max subscribers got it in July, Pro in August, then everyone else in October.
And the data here, it really confirmed those classic new tech diffusion patterns. But the intensity was just shocking.
How so?
The earliest group, the July 9th Max subscribers, they made 9 times as many agentic queries as the average user who joined in October.
9 times?
Yeah. So it's not just about getting it early. This points to a really deep investment from initial power users. The tech-savvy crowd who immediately plugged this into their daily workflow.
And this intensity becomes even more stark when you zoom out to the country level. The link between a nation's wealth, its education levels, and agent adoption is, it's incredibly strong.
It's a robust finding, and honestly, a bit alarming. The study found these profound correlations between adoption rates and a country's logged GDP per capita and its average years of education.
So we're talking about a situation where a country's wealth can explain something like 70% of the variation in adoption.
Over 70%, yeah. And education explained over 56%. It just confirms that right now this tool is finding its home in the most economically developed and highly skilled economies.
Which raises a pretty big question, doesn't it? If these agents provide a huge efficiency boost, and they're mostly being adopted in countries that are already ahead, is this just going to widen the global productivity gap?
That is the critical policy question this data forces us to confront. It could absolutely exacerbate existing disparities.
So let's zoom in a bit from countries to professions. Who is actually driving all this usage?
The biggest single group is digital technology. That cluster makes up about 28% of all adopters.
But raw numbers don't tell the whole story. We need to look at the intensity, which the paper measures with something called AAR and AUR, agent adoption ratio and agent usage ratio.
Exactly. For our audience, think of it this way. If a group's ratio is over 1, it means they're overrepresented. They're adopting or using the agent more than you'd expect based on their sheer numbers. They're punching above their weight.
So who are these power users? Who's punching above their weight?
Well, this is what's so interesting. It's not just the software engineers you might expect. The highest intensity users are actually in marketing and sales. Their usage ratio, the AUR, was 1.46.
Higher than anyone else.
Yep. Followed by management and entrepreneurship at 1.38. And maybe most importantly, students had a really high AUR of 1.26.
That's fascinating. Marketing, management, and students. Why those groups? They're not all hardcore coders.
Because the agent is immediately valuable for tasks that involve synthesizing a ton of information and then executing complex digital steps. A marketer needs to analyze trends and draft campaigns.
A manager needs to summarize reports and coordinate schedules.
And students, well, they're using it intensely for learning and research. It's basically functioning as a superpowered study assistant, helping them tear through coursework.
That's a perfect segue into what people are actually doing. The paper introduces this new hierarchical taxonomy to classify queries. Why do they need a whole new system for this?
Because the old ways of categorizing search queries just didn't cut it. A traditional taxonomy is for finding information, but an agent completes actions in a dynamic environment.
So they needed a way to organize intent based on the action taken?
Precisely. The structure is topic, then subtopic, then the specific task, and finally the environment, like the website where the action happens. It lets you quantify the whole workflow, not just the question.
And the top-level topics from that data are very clear. Productivity and workflow and learning and research make up a combined 57% of all queries.
It's the dominant narrative. Productivity is the biggest chunk at 36%. If you look at, say, workers in financial services, almost half of their queries fall into that productivity bucket.
Which makes sense. High-stakes reporting, complex analysis, and learning and research is the other big one at 21%, which is just overwhelmingly the primary use case for students and educators.
Right. And beyond that 57%, you have media and entertainment at 16% and shopping and commerce at 10%.
But even within those, the focus is still on structured goals, isn't it?
It is. The single largest subtopic of all is courses at 13%. Followed by shopping for goods at 9%. So people are using it to get certified or to buy a specific thing, not just to, idly browse.
Let's get even more granular. What are the top 5 specific tasks the agent is executing across the board? This really shows us where the immediate value is.
Okay, the top 5 really paint a picture of multi-step information processing. Number 1 is assist exercises, which is part of that course's subtopic. That's almost 10% of all tasks.
So helping with homework, basically.
Essentially. Number 2 is summarize or analyze research information. 3 is create or edit documents or forms. 4 is search or filter products.
Okay, so that's the shopping part.
Right. And number 5 is search or filter research information.
Look at that list. Summarization, document editing, coursework assistance. These are all things that are, cognitively demanding. They take a human a lot of time and effort. The agent is just absorbing that friction.
It really is. And the data on task concentration shows where it's becoming indispensable.
Yeah.
For very specific, structured things like searching for flights, the agent is used in over 90% of those queries.
Wow. So for that specific problem, it's already the go-to tool.
It seems so. Whereas for something more open-ended, like just searching for videos, its use is much more spread out.
Why do you think that difference exists?
It suggests the agent is most valuable when your goal is super defined and you need to navigate a complex but known structure, like comparing flight prices across different dates. For more exploratory stuff, maybe the old interface still feels more natural to people.
Okay, let's talk context. Professional versus personal life. How does that split look?
Overall, it leans a little bit personal, about 55%, but professional use is a really strong 30%, with educational at 16%.
And I bet professional use is very focused.
Extremely. 56% of it is on productivity, and another 24% is on job and career. The top subtopics are things like document editing, professional networking, and job searching. It's handling high-value work tasks.
Now, one of the most compelling parts of this paper is how usage evolves over time. Does it mature beyond that initial, oh, this is a cool new toy phase?
It absolutely does. And this is where you see the agent really earning its keep. There's high short-term stickiness, meaning people who use it for productivity tend to keep using it for productivity.
The long-term shift is the real story here, right?
That's the most fascinating finding. The researchers compared a user's very first query to their entire history of queries later on.
And what did they find? What are people moving away from and what are they moving toward?
They're moving away from travel and leisure and media and entertainment. The share of those topics drops significantly over time. It seems people test it out on something simple or fun, realize it works really well.
And then they graduate it to their actual difficult problems.
Exactly. The share of queries for productivity and workflow, learning and research, and job and career all increase. It's strong evidence that as users get comfortable, they start trusting it with more cognitively oriented, high-stakes tasks.
It's more than a novelty. It becomes an integrated tool for serious knowledge work.
That's the takeaway.
So where is all this work happening? Let's talk about the environments, the actual websites the agent is interacting with. This gives us a real-world footprint.
Yeah, and it's quite concentrated. The top 16 websites account for nearly 2/3 of all queries.
Okay.
And the top 4 are very telling.
What are they?
Number 1 is docs.google.com with almost 12%.
Okay, so editing documents.
Yep. Then combined email services are at 11%. LinkedIn.com is at 9.4%, and YouTube.com is at 7%.
So let's just pause on that. The agent is spending most of its time editing documents, managing email, handling professional networking, and sourcing structured video content. That is a powerful statement about its utility.
It is. And just like with the tasks, we see different levels of concentration. For something like professional networking, almost all the action's on LinkedIn, over 95% concentration in the top few sites.
But for other things, it's more spread out.
Much more. For complex stuff like account management or project management, the environments are really dispersed. The top 5 sites might only account for 30 or 40% of the action.
And for a technical audience, that dispersion is a huge signal. It means the agent isn't just a specialized tool for one platform. It's being used across Trello, Jira, Asana, probably custom internal software. It's proving it's a general purpose tool.
Exactly. It shows its adaptability across a whole array of different tools people use for work.
Okay, to make all of this feel less abstract, let's walk through the NeuriPS flight booking example from the paper. This is where that React framework really comes to life.
Let's do it. So the user gives this high-level, kind of ambiguous goal. Find me flights from Boston to San Diego for the NeurAPS conference, but I want late night and cheaper options.
So the human sets the goal, but the agent has to figure out all the details and deal with the trade-offs. What's the very first thing it has to do?
It needs context the user didn't provide. So step 1, it thinks. It does a quick web search to find the exact dates and location of the conference, December 2nd to 7th, 2025, in San Diego.
Okay, so it fills in the blanks. Then it acts.
It loads Google Flights, plugs in Boston and San Diego, and applies the user's initial constraints, non-stop late-night flights.
But the first results are probably too expensive, right? They don't meet the cheaper constraint.
Exactly. And this is the magic. It doesn't just give up and show the expensive flights. It observes that result, sees the problem, and iterates.
It changes its own strategy.
It changes its strategy. It thinks again. It realizes the late-night filter might be the problem, so it decides to expand the date range. It checks for a red-eye flight a day or two earlier on November 30th to see if that's cheaper.
Just like a human travel agent would, it adapts to the feedback from the environment.
And by doing that, it finds a better solution. And then it compiles a whole summary and recommendation for the user. That entire sequence, searching for context, acting on a live website, observing the outcome, iterating on the plan, and summarizing, that is the very definition of what an agent does.
So if we pull all of this together, what's the big picture?
The story is pretty clear. AI agent adoption, at least right now, is heavily skewed toward highly skilled, knowledge-intensive workers.
And they're using it for repeatable, complex work in productivity and learning, not just for fun.
Right. And the longitudinal data shows they're finding real, sustainable value. This isn't a fad.
The early evidence is just overwhelming. This is an integrated tool for high-leverage knowledge work.
And, while this paper gives us this incredible snapshot of text-based desktop use, the authors point to the next frontier. Everything we've discussed is mostly someone at a computer, typing.
But that's already changing.
It's already changing. As these agents move to mobile, and the main way we interact with them becomes voice-to-voice, how does that change things? What new use cases emerge?
That's the provocative thought to end on, isn't it? Will we start delegating simpler, more immediate tasks just because talking is easier than typing? And does that fundamentally change the entire pattern of how we use these powerful new tools? That's something for you, the listener, to really think about next.